Hello and welcome back to my channel. So Blackmagic introduced the PYXIS 12K yesterday, and as a PYXIS 6K user for the past 6 months, I wanted to really look at the technical differences between the 6K and the 12K and see if it's really worth me upgrading, and if so, specifically why that would be. So that's what this video is mainly about. And also in this video, I compare how the PYXIS 12K compares in terms of the sensor performance to some of the bigger brands such as Arri and Sony. So if you stick around till later on in the video, you'll be able to have a look at that information and join in that discussion in the comments. So let's get to it. So what I'm going to do is give you the breakdown of all of the differences that I was able to find between the 12K and the 6K, starting with the 12K, and then I'll mention the 6K. Okay, starting with the sensor size. So the PYXIS 12K has a sensor size of 35.64 millimeters by 23.32 millimeters versus the 6K, which is 36 millimeters by 24 millimeters. So technically speaking, the 12K is large format and the 6K is full frame. So the 6K sensor is slightly large in dimensions, offering a full frame look, while the 12K is technically large format, but just a tad smaller. Okay, if we look at the pixel pitch, the term pixel pitch refers to the distance between the centers of the two adjacent pixels on a sensor, usually measured in micrometers. So it's 2.9 micrometers for the 12K and 5.94 micrometers for the 6K. So the lens mount options are the same. You have the PL, you have the L mount, and you have the EF mount. I've gone for the L mount so that I can adapt it and have a variable ND. I use the one by Poco, which gives me the ability to put a clear or variable ND. So one of the fears that I had, or one of the things that I thought I'd really miss, was having the internal NDs, because I've got the 6K Pro, which I've converted to a PL mount. And if you haven't seen that video, there's a link for that somewhere in this video now. You can check out how I did that. So the first big difference you have between the 6K and the 12K is you have 16 stops of dynamic range on the 12K and 13 stops on the PYXIS 6K, the original OG PYXIS. So that's 3 stops of dynamic range between the two. So that's offering a greater latitude for post-production work. So the dynamic range describes the maximum latitude between total black and the brightest signal that a sensor can record without clipping. So for context, let's look at some of the other workhorse cameras that are on the market, that have been on the market, and see how it compares to the 16 stops of dynamic range that the 12K has, as well as the 13 stops of the original PYXIS 6K. So the Sony Venice has 16 stops of dynamic range. That's the Venice 2. The Sony Venice 1 has 15 plus stops, so a little bit more than 15. The Arri Alexa 35 is 17 stops. The Arri Alexa Classic is 13.8 stops. The Sony FX3 has 15 plus stops. The Sony FX9 has 15 plus stops. Blackmagic Ursa Cine 12K LF has 16 stops, and the PYXIS has 13 stops of dynamic range. Now it's to be noted that all these other sensors are traditional CMOS sensors, and they're not the same RGBW that the PYXIS 12K and the Ursa Cine are. Okay, so we go to the native ISO. 12K has a single native ISO of 800, while the 6K offers dual native ISO for better low light flexibility. So it has 400 and a 3200. The 400 and 3200 is in keeping with some of the other most of the other Blackmagic cameras up until this point. But because of the RGBW technology, the camera does not have a dual native ISO. It just has one native ISO of 800, but it has better low light performance than the standard sensor, which has to have dual native ISOs. So that's a big improvement there. So next up is maximum resolution. So the maximum resolution of the 12K is 12288 by 8040 pixels, and in 6K is 6040 by 4032. So the 12K delivers ultra high resolution suitable for large format cinema or immersive VFX work. And the maximum frame rates, this is another reason why the 12K is so much more interesting than the 6K for me. You have up to 112 FPS frames per second in 8K or 4K mode at 2.4:1 ratio, or up to 120 frames per second in 1080p. The 12K offers significantly more high frame rate options, making it more flexible for cinematic slow motion. Right, so this is another significant difference between the 12K and the 6K if you look at storage media. So they both have 2 times the CF Express Type B cards, and they both have USB-C slots on the back, so you can attach an external hard disk. But the difference is that the 12K has a USB-C, which has a maximum data transfer rate of 10 gigabits per second. So for example, if you have one of the hard disks which has the higher output rate, like for example the Crucial X10 SSD drives, for which I've made a case. You can find out more information about that case on my website or check in the links below. If you have one of those SSDs, then you can record direct to disk, and you can get the full available bandwidth and speed of the Crucial SSD and other compatible SSDs with twice the speed that you get on the 6K, on the 12K now. So in addition to being able to sustain the high data rates, you can also transfer the data much quicker, twice as fast off of your 12K than you can on your 6K when you need to transfer and back up your data onto your external drives or your other drives. Okay, in terms of media formatting, you can do the same thing on both machines, exFAT or HFS+. And the supported codecs, they both have BRAW and compression ratios and proxy recording, but the difference is you have some additional options for the 12K. So you have 3:1, 5:1, 8:1, 12:1, but then in addition, you also have 18:1 on the 12K. Whereas on the 6K, you basically top out at 12:1 in terms of compression. So to the Ethernet ports, well, they both have Ethernet ports, but the 12K has a much faster 10 gigabit Ethernet port, which is ideal for file sharing and camera control on big productions. The audio inputs are exactly the same. There is one mini XLR and one 3.5mm stereo jack. And likewise, the audio outputs for the headphones are exactly the same, 1 times 3.5mm headphone. Looking at the screens, the displays again are exactly the same. You have a 4-inch 1920 by 1080 LCD touchscreen. Screen brightness again is exactly the same. The batteries are exactly the same, but the power consumption is slightly different. So the power consumption on the 12K is 90 watts, and on the 6K it's 60 watts. So the 12K draws more power with a 90 watt supply compared to 60 watt on the 6K. So as a result, the battery life will be generally shorter on the 12K under similar circumstances. And obviously the software included is DaVinci Resolve Studio, Blackmagic OS, Camera OS, etc. There is a slight difference in terms of what the minimum requirements are for the operating system. So the 12K, the minimum operating system is macOS 14 plus, Windows 10. And for the 6K, it is macOS 13 plus and Windows 10 and 11. The other slight difference you have is in the weight. So the 12K is 0.2 pounds heavier than the 6K. So the 12K is 3.5 pounds and the 6K is 3.3 pounds, or 1.6 kilograms and 1.5 kilograms. The optional accessories are exactly the same and the dimensions are exactly the same. The thing that's good about the dimensions for me is that obviously I've designed some accessories for the PYXIS. So for example, I've designed this base plate, which allows you to have an Arri Rosette on the side, and that will allow you to, if you're going handheld, you can have a handle on one side and your handle on the other side with the PYXIS side plate. And the great thing is that the dimensions are exactly the same, so my PYXIS accessories will work on the 6K and the 12K. So if you're interested in picking up those accessories or checking those out or learning a bit more, then head over to my website, which is motionpicturehardware.com, and check out the shop section where you can check out those products. Don't forget, you can also check out the heavy duty gimbal L bracket there. So if you want to build your creator rig with whatever camera you have now, and also with the PYXIS 6K or 12K, you can do that as well. So one of the most important things about this new camera is the new sensor. And like I said, they're using the RGBW technology, which makes the sensor faster at reading out. And although it's not a global shutter, it has much improved rolling shutter performance. So to put that into context, I want to look at some of the other cameras which are on the market, which people are using as workhorse cameras for lots of huge productions. So I've done a very comprehensive chart which shows the sensor readout speed for cameras by the resolution, and we have color coded all the different cameras here. So we have the Sony Venice, we have the Ursa Cine 12K, we have the Arri Alexa 35, the Sony Venice 1, and the Arri Alexa Classic, and the Arri Alexa Mini LF, the Sony Burano, the PYXIS 12K, the Sony FX3, the Sony FX6, the PYXIS 12K, the Panasonic GH6. Then you go all the way down to Blackmagic PYXIS 6K, the original 6K. To eliminate the jello effect and the wobble effect, what you ideally want to have is single digit millisecond readout speeds. So the cameras that do that are below 10 milliseconds, are the Sony FX3, FX6, the PYXIS 12K, the Burano, the Arri Alexa Mini LF, the Arri Alexa Classic, the Venice 1, the Venice 2, the Ursa Cine 12K, and the Arri Alexa 35. So if you look at the original PYXIS 6K and some of the 12K modes and even the Sony Burano, some of them are up in the 25 millisecond range, 20 to 15. And in some of the modes, the amount of sensor readout delay or the sensor readout time is going to be not conducive to moving the camera. It's going to be good if you have a static shot, or you're doing push-ins that are towards the camera, or just not a lot of movement. But if you sort of like do any kind of whip pans, or any, for example, if you're walking and you're using a gimbal and there's steps, it's going to be very, very noticeable. Whereas if you get down below 10 milliseconds, it's going to be a lot less noticeable. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go for the 12K, because you finally get down, depending on the resolution you use, you finally get down to sub 10 milliseconds, where you are effectively getting into near global shutter territory, which is fantastic. You can do that and still get 4K. So the other thing of note is that there are many more resolutions that you can record at with the 12K versus the 6K. With the 12K, there are actually 20 resolutions versus 10 resolutions with the 6K. And within those resolutions, you can also record at different data rates as well. So there's lots of combinations of possibilities in terms of how you want to record and whichever flavor you want. But the main thing is that you have a lot more options with the 12K PYXIS, and you can record and downsample down to 1080p or 4K or whatever it is that you need to deliver to. So another reason I wanted to say that I'm glad that Blackmagic has done this is because they have basically given us what is the majority of what the 12K does, but the most important thing is that they've given it to us in a small package. So thank you, Blackmagic, for doing that as well. So that's it. That's my roundup of the differences between the 12K and the 6K. So if you found value in this video, I'd like it if you can like, share, subscribe, share in your Facebook groups and all that stuff. And like I said, if you're interested in getting the heavy duty gimbal L bracket, you can hop over to my website, as well as some of the other PYXIS accessories and the LiDAR extension arm for your DJI Focus Pro system as well. You can check that out. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and until then, stay lucky, stay blessed.